Hi, this is Mr. RB. Today we're going to be exploring analytical cubism. Analytical cubism refers to the early phase of cubism, usually considered to be in practice from about 1908 to 1912. It was characterized by a fragmentary appearance of multiple viewpoints and overlapping planes. There's reasons why the artists, Picasso, Juan Gris, Georges Braque, and some others were interested in this. And we'll get to some of that as we go along. But first let's review some of the materials you'll need or want for today's exercise. First, you'll want some sort of straight edge. We'll need that briefly. I'm just using a piece of cardboard from an old pasta box. You'll need a pencil or pen, briefly. You'll need something sticky, tape or glue stick or regular old white school glue, Elmer's glue. Any of those will work. If you don't have anything sticky, this exercise will still work. It's just a little harder to keep the pieces together at the very end. Also, you'll want a scissors or something to cut with. This is just a little pair of household scissors, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It'll work. We don't need it for very long. So the other thing you need is two pictures of the same thing. And the two pictures need to be from different points of view. Let me show you an example. It could be a picture that you drew. Yesterday I drew these two pictures of a face. But notice that one is from the side in profile, and one is a front view. If you're not feeling like doing your own drawing of an object or person from two views, you could also use some of the ones that I put on the lesson plan. Click on those and it'll take you to the site and you can print them out. Or you could find your own. Here's some examples of what I did. Here's one of Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson, of course, the first black player to break the color barrier in Major League Baseball in modern history. And here's a picture of him, again, in side view and in front view. We're going to take these and we're going to use paper weaving to create our own very fragmented picture that shows more than one view of something or someone at more than one moment in time, all on a single two-dimensional piece of paper. Let me show you briefly a couple pictures of early Cubist portraits. You can notice that in the one on the right, it's not too hard to still notice that there's a face up here with eyes, and we have some sense of body, maybe a tie right here. On the one on the left, the figure has become so fragmented, and the pieces of what we think a figure looks like so broken up and recombined that we can barely tell that maybe this is a neck, there's possibly a head here, this could be a body, maybe an arm going to the side. It's really pretty hard to tell. Today we're going to take our pictures, break them up, which is what analysis is about. We're breaking things up, getting them into their component parts, and then we're going to create our own analytical cubist portrait. I need to take either one of these and fold them in half. Notice that I'm lining them up with the same orientation. These are both vertical. It doesn't really matter if they're both vertical or if they're both horizontal. The main thing for our purposes is that they be the same. I'm going to take this first one and fold it in half from top to bottom, or bottom to top. I want to get my corners to line up. When I feel that they've lined up well, I hold them over at the flap and I crease out towards the fold. In order to get ready for the paper weaving, I want to make a line along the flap side. Notice the flap side where my hand can go in. I just want a straight line, probably about maybe an inch or 3/4 of an inch from the edge. I'm using fairly flimsy paper. It's just computer printout paper. So I don't want any of my cuts to get too close to the edge, or my paper tends to snap and break as I work. If you do have a piece of paper tear a bit, you can usually fix it with a little piece of tape, if you have some clear tape especially. Even masking tape would work. It's just a little more imposing, a little messier looking in the end, but it can work. Now I'm going to turn this on its side, and I need to make some stripes going from the line I drew down to the fold. Notice that this is the fold. And I'm going to emphasize this a lot because this is usually the place where the most people who run into trouble. This is the flap. I can put my hand in it. This is the fold. I cannot put my hand into it. I need to make my lines going from the fold heading up towards the flap. I do not touch the flap. There's the end of my line, and you can see there's still room to get to the flap. If you get it wrong, you will know in a few minutes. I want to make either 5 or 7 lines. If I'm making 7, I can probably make them about an inch apart. If I'm making 5, they need to be just a little wider. 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't have to be absolutely equally wide apart. In fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In fact, the only thing I would really urge is that they be kind of distributed across the page. Otherwise, part of your page will look not very interesting. And that none of them be so thin. You know, if they're as thin as this, narrow as this pencil, that's a really skinny piece of paper. And I've just had a lot of people who they end up getting broken. At this point, I'm done with the straight edge and the pencil. And now I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm cutting, again, from the fold, this folded part, up to the top of my line. That first straight line we drew tells us just where to stop cutting. Is it the end of the world if you're slightly off? Nope, but it does make it easier the more you can get that neatly cut. By the way, if you've done paper weaving before, then this will all seem fairly familiar. If you've never done paper weaving before, then welcome to the world of paper weaving. I find that 5 or 7 is a good number for a piece of paper this size. And again, this is an 8.5 by 11. If I get the strips too thin, they do tend to break. If they're too wide, let's say I had only made, at the extreme, 1 cut, then I don't get the fragmenting that gives me that analytical cubist feel or style. I'm opening it up, and now it looks like this with these little flaps that cut. Notice they're attached at both ends. If you did not cut the right way and you cut across the flap ends over here, these strips will separate and they'll be attached in the middle. And the best thing I can do is say, probably get a new printout and just redo it. Next, if you can't do another printout, or if let's say you're using an original drawing, you can always tape it together and then start the cutting all over again. Now notice on this one, I have them both laid out horizontally at the moment. Again, the important thing is that they're the same. See how the cuts go side to side on the first one? Now I cut top to bottom. I cut the long way on the first one. I cut across the short way on the second one. I'm going to cut a fairly wide strip. I think that's a good 2 inches. And I start by going, it doesn't matter, I can start by going over, then under, then over, now under, then over, now under, then over, and now under. I want to slide that down to the end so I don't leave big gaps. I'm ready for my next strip. And again, I'm going at about 2 inches. You can cut them more narrowly. I wouldn't cut them too much wider if you can help it. Now on that first one, I started by going over. So on the second one, I start by going under. Everything is about opposites with weaving. Under, over, under, over. If you went under, then you go over. If you went over, next you go under. Then over, then under, then over. I'm going to again comb that down a little. And I'm ready for my next strip. Notice that I am almost done. I think it took a lot more to explain why we're doing it than to just do this. I started by going under last time, so now I start by going over. I went over, so I go under. I went under, so now I go over. I went over, yes, you got it, now I go under. I just alternate over, under, as I go across. I slide that down, and notice as I get a couple of them in place, the end of the tab goes under, this one goes over, this one goes under, yep, the next one will go over. Well, let's check it and see. We'll put that in and see how it goes. I am just about done with this weaving. As you're watching this, do feel free to slow it down. You can slow the YouTube videos down. Over in the bottom right hand corner, there's a little gear wheel. Click on it. Click on playback speed and pick either 0.75 for a little slower, 0.50 for more slow, and of course 0.25 for the very slowest playback. You can also stop the video, pause the video, or go back to earlier stages in the video for anything that you weren't sure of or you missed or that you want to redo. Again, I'm just going over, under, over, now once again under, and finally over. I have a little bit of space left over here. I'm not even going to worry about that. I think this is already good enough. I could call this quits, but if I want to make sure that it doesn't fall apart on me, and they do sometimes get a little loose, that's where either the glue or glue stick or even tape would work. My favorite is the glue stick just because it's the least mess. I'm just putting a little dab there and stick it down. Lift up the end of the strip, a little glue, stick it down. Well, 2, now I'm going to turn it around this side. Stick, stick, and I'll be very good, flip it over and do this side where I get 2 on one side. I've had students who, the weaving got difficult and maybe they made their pieces small or, it was all sorts of things go on and it wasn't perfectly done and it still looked all fragmented and broken up and kind of wonderful. So there is some leeway and I would urge you to enjoy it and not get too worried about it. Fragment the image, don't fragment yourself. Anyhow, there is the beginning of my Cubist, Analytical Cubist picture. Save this weaving. Next week, we'll continue with the next step in turning this into your own Analytical Cubist drawing. Till then, have a great week. I hope you're enjoying yourself, and let us know if you have any questions. Talk to you then. Bye, everybody.